Thank you for the warm welcome. I'm really excited to be here today and chat with everybody. So, I was introduced, I work at Gartner. I'm a senior consultant, and I've had quite a bit of a journey in my career. And I am a first-generation immigrant. I ran into a number of challenges in my journey, so this is what the chat is about. So, first up, why is first-generation immigrant challenges important to think about? The reason is because in society we deal with a lot of not so positive outcomes when it comes to being a first-generation immigrant. For example, our medium household income tends to be a little bit lower, our home ownership rates are a little bit lower, our college graduate rates are lower, and we have a higher chance of being in poverty. So there are a number of challenges that we deal with when we're a first-generation immigrant, and mine are kind of specific to the ones that I experienced. So hopefully this talk will help to motivate some of you or inspire you or just give you additional perspective when it comes to your career and your endeavors. This is what an American dream of a career trajectory looks like. You work really hard, graduate from the top of your school, get a great first entry job, work your way up the corporate ladder, maybe get an MBA, and get yourself into leadership. Or maybe get into entrepreneurship, but essentially you're trying to go in an upward trajectory. Maybe your parents want you to do this, and you aspire this for yourself and your family. Well, this was what my career trajectory looked like. It had a lot of ups and downs. It didn't really quite go all the way up, and that's what I want to chat with you about. So to give you some background about me, I consider myself Peruvian American. I actually American by nature and Peruvian by nurture. My parents are Peruvian. We were brought here when we were very little. Actually, it's a picture of my parents on the right, actually sitting in front of the UC Davis dorms. We actually lived in dorms for a couple of years when we were young. And on the left, that's me and my siblings hanging out in Peru. So we definitely grew up in a very Peruvian household, trying to kind of maintain that culture, but definitely exposed to the US and the ways of Americans. I went through high school, and I was very torn in what I was going to pursue. I love design, and I wasn't sure if I should do mechanical design or fashion design. It's just something that I've always been very passionate about. But I ended up choosing to study mechanical and aeronautical engineering, and it tended to be the wiser career choice, but I still did get into other design work, which I'll chat about. So these are the different steps that I took in my career. I studied mechanical and aeronautical engineering. I got a number of really great internships at some really great companies. I did mechanical design there, and when I graduated, I decided I wanted to switch gears, and I'd always been interested in consulting, and this was my first stab at technology consulting. I joined Accenture, and I highlighted in red because it actually was probably the toughest. It actually wasn't everything I imagined it would be. It was a technology consulting opportunity, but for whatever reason, it didn't work out for me, and I didn't like it. So I left technology consulting, and I went back into the engineering space. I went into manufacturing for a Johns Manville company. I got into entrepreneurship, worked with my father's business, created my own business, decided to get an MBA, and actually ended up going back to technology consulting, which is right here at the end, Gartner. So why did it not work out the first time I went to consulting? And it did the second. I love what I get to do. Let me just show you some of the work we get to do really quick. When people ask, what do you do? I typically respond with, I help organizations make technology decisions. There are a lot of really tough technology decisions that our organizational leaders face, and that's what I get to do. So here's some snapshots of some of the work we get to do. This is application rationalization, where we look at applications and look at whether they might have, against technical and business scores, how they rate, Maybe you have duplications, maybe you have other technology health issues. This is just a snapshot of some architecture work, when data and analytics architecture, as well as kind of enterprise architecture. This is a mapping of future state business capabilities, as well as development rollouts, and some other work. So I love this work, really exciting. But let me jump into the key challenges. Why it's just really great now, but it wasn't so great at first when I joined Accenture, and why. And these are the reasons why. So I found that there were some Latino culture values that I grew up with, and some consulting cultural values that existed in this profession that I wasn't quite aware of. So the Latino cultural values that I learned to live with was that we were very family-centric. Everything revolves around the core of the family. It's all about the family, especially when you're a first-generation immigrant. You're here on your own, sort of, so it's just you and your family and maybe a few close friends, but that's your tight network. And in comparison, you have the consulting cultural value, which is very network-centric. And I'm not talking just a social network or even a professional network when you are meeting people from different organizations. I'm talking about a network within the organization itself, including clients, including your colleagues, in order for you to expand and grow and get into that next engagement and work with that really great partner. And it's all about this network. But I didn't really learn the value of this network when I was younger, because it was all about this smaller family network rather than this bigger network. And that little blue dot in the left, that was like me when I was at Accenture, and I was kind of oblivious to the rest of the network going on around me. You basically need this network in consulting to make sure that you're successful. And so that was one of the first realizations I had there. Another cultural value that was challenging was this dependence and independence. So my Latino cultural value was a little more of a dependent, and I wouldn't say that in a negative way, but rather because you are here on your own. You don't have a lot of extended network. You have this smaller, like family, some close friends. You kind of become a little more dependent on certain people in a good way. It's just sort of a dependence. You know, your parents want you to count on them. They're always supporting you. There's always somebody to kind of help you with that, with your getting out of your comfort zone if you're willing to do that. But independence on the consulting cultural value, it's more about being independent. So are you able to take on a brand new opportunity all on your own? Are you able to recruit people into your new idea or into your new project role? So it takes a lot of independence. It takes a lot of getting out of your comfort zone. But as a first-generation immigrant, every single day is almost like you're out of your comfort zone, because you're in a different place, just with certain family, with a smaller group. So you just have more of a dependence way of doing things than an independent way of doing things. Another one that I found was this idea of conformity. So because when you are in a new country, you want to kind of maintain some of those cultural norms, some of the cultural values that your family has brought with you. So I'm very proud to be Peruvian and want to maintain all that, but in a way, there's a piece of it is almost conforming-like. So on the other side, on the consulting cultural values, it's highly opinionated. It's all about somebody's opinion. What do you think about this problem? And what do you think about what we should do? What are your thoughts and what are your opinions and what is your perspective? That's what consulting requires, but I was very used to kind of going along with what family thinks, with what teachers think, with what we should do, what's the right step to do. So these were very conflicting as well for me. And the last one I would say is my cultural value my Latino cultural value of being indirect versus the consulting culture value of being direct. So, and this has to do with, in a way that I grew up in the Latino culture, it was more about, you want to be very, if you have something direct to say, that might come across offensive, that might not be very polite, might not be very nice or respectful. So you sometimes lean on being more indirect because that's just maybe nicer or more respectful way to approach things. But rather, on the consulting side, it's all about being direct, because if you're not direct, people can't read our minds, they can't tell what you want, they can't understand where you're coming from. So these were conflicting for me as well. So those are the four, I think. So with all of these, I realized that by finally realizing this, I started to understand that I almost became a different person, and I almost started to understand that consulting really was for me. I just didn't really understand the culture that it revolved around, that was at its core. And once I did, it's been amazing. I really love what I get to do, and it has really helped me across many parts of my career. It's just a couple pictures that my kids, and I'm pursuing an entrepreneurship business as well, and just a picture of me with some of the clients. But hopefully that gave you some perspective when it comes to your career and maybe some other things you decide to do based on what you find are cultural values and in your profession and those at home as well. Thank you.